Welcome. Today I'm going to go through some of the beginnings of CAD, of AutoCAD. This will be for a construction program or for an architectural drawing. First thing, when you open up CAD, it will be in an engineering inch mode, and for architecture and construction we need to be in an architectural setting. That was my phone. I do apologize. I'll turn that down. So I'm going to click on the new button up here at the top, and it will open up a dialog box. Maybe. Let's click on it again. There we go. Click on the dialog box and you'll notice that you have Tertuil arch manufacturing. The I here stands for inches. So we have inch arch, inch manufacturing, M, which is metric arch, and metric manufacturing. I'm going to double click on I arch, and you'll see that it opens up and gives us a layout currently, and we will talk about the layout in a later session. What I want you to do is click on the little button down here that says model. You'll come back to a black screen. We have nothing on here at all. I can zoom by rolling my wheel on my mouse. I can drag by pushing down on the wheel of the mouse, and I can pan or drag. So I'm going to do a little quick drawing here just to kind of show you what I'm doing here. So I can zoom again with the wheel. Okay, so don't try to draw out here. You know, if you're going to get to here, let's get in here and do the drawing in here, rather than trying to draw it fully arm's length. Get in there, see the problem, fix it, and move on. I can also, again, I can pan, I can drag these back and forth. And also, if I'm out and I have something like this, I can double click on my wheel and it will pull it down to where I can see everything. Okay, so if I have several drawings in here, and I'm way out here, I can double click. It will pull it into where I can see all of the drawings. Or if I'm all the way in and I can't figure out what's going on, I double click on it and it will take me out to all of my drawings. You'll find out that from time to time you make mistakes and you can't find out where you're at. So remember to double click on your wheel, and that will pull you all the way out to your zoom extent, and that's extents of all the drawings that's on there currently. Okay, so I actually have two open here. The first one was that drawing one was the first one that we actually opened up. I'm going to close that, and that just leaves my drawing here. Move my little box here where I can get to everything. I don't like to have all this stuff on here. I can close it, I can minimize it, or I can maximize it, or I can just shut it down completely. So I'm going to maximize it. And that was maximized. I'm sorry. So this also I can navigate through here. I really don't want to mess with this at this point. Just kind of leave it alone. Pretend like it's not there. And this as well. It's just too noisy, and I'm going to actually close it. So let's begin by talking about a few things. This is what we call 0, 0. And that means that the x-axis, which is this way, is 0, and the y-axis, which is this way, is also 0. And if I were to to say that I need to move something, I am going to say X, Y. Okay, X always goes first, Y always goes second. So for instance, I'm going to click on line here. All right. Look down here and you'll see that there's some things going on here. As it stands right now, and I'm going to pull this in so that I don't have such big numbers. So as you see, now keep in mind, look down here. I'm going to leave my cursor alone. I'm not going to move it. And it says, down at the bottom, it says 11/16, comma, 5/8. Now it also says it here in the dialog box beside my cursor. If you see that when I move it around, that number changes. Okay, but it is always corresponding to this number right here. Okay, so that is, as that says right there, that is the drawing coordinates. So anything that is above here, in other words, if I were to go from here out this way, notice that that number is a positive number. It's 4 inches, 4 and 11/16. If I am in this direction, in other words, I am in the quadrant, in the first quadrant here, I am a positive 13/16, 5/8, meaning that I'm 13/16 in the X, 5/8 in the Y. Actually, wish I had another cursor where I could point to the cursor. That doesn't make much sense. So let's drop down below X into the quadrant down here. And I tell you what, I'm going to draw a couple of lines in here just so that you understand what quadrant that I'm talking about. Just some simple drawings there. So when I stay in this quadrant, you'll notice that my numbers are both positive, 13/16 and 3/4. If I go down here, you'll notice that the Y coordinate is in the negative. I have 5/8 positive, negative 5/8. So that means that I drop below this line here, okay, and that was the Y line. This is Y0, okay, so above is positive, below is negative. If I come over to this quadrant, you'll notice that I'm showing the X quadrant, or the X coordinate, in a negative. So I have a negative 13/16 X and a positive 13 Y, meaning that I crossed this threshold, which was the X threshold, X0, and this is the Y0. So over here, I'm going to be negative X, positive Y. Now let's refresh. We have positive, positive, positive X, negative Y, negative X, positive Y, and when I drop down to the last quadrant here, I have negative X, negative Y. Okay. Some of the things that I have down here also control what's going on in my palette. This is my palette. Okay, this is what I'm drawing on, my drawing board. Grid display, for instance. If I click on grid display, you will see that I have a grid that is set up, and I can turn it off. If I have my grid on and I click on snap mode, you'll notice that it pops, and I'm going to pull right on in here. See how it jumps? And it jumps per inch. Okay, so you'll see that that's 53 feet 1 inch, and I move it over, and it's going to jump to 2 inches. See how it done there? 2 inches. Now I can drop to 3 inches. Okay, so I'm going to a quadrant or to a snap mode of 1 inch. So I'm going to turn that off. I'm also going to turn my grid display off. I generally don't use that a great deal. The next one I want to talk about is Ortho. In the Ortho command, when I try to draw something, it is only going to draw it in the positive, or excuse me, in the X or Y mode, never in anything else. Okay? See how it does? I cannot get 45-degree angles on that when I use this method, the ortho mode. I'm going to turn the ortho mode off, and you can see that it's smooth drawing here. I can do anything I want to. But if I want to make perfect circle or perfect squares, then I can turn the ortho mode on, and I can make nice squares. Generally, we turn that off. We do not use that in most cases. Polar tracking. I'll give you an example of polar tracking. As you see now, when I try to, I'll tell you what, let me get rid of this. When I try to draw a line, and I'm trying to, get that polar tracking, when I get this, it pops in the ortho mode. And I want to turn that off, but I still kind of want a little bit of play there. I can actually turn this polar tracking on and watch what happens when I get to 0. See how that little green line there comes into play? When I go down here, same thing happens there. So it kind of helps me where I can see where an ortho setting kind of helps me, enables me, but it doesn't force me to use only that. So I kind of like leaving that on there. The object snap. Okay, let me draw a little funky little thing here right quick. And then I'm going to go back to the line, and I'm going to turn this off, the object snap. I'm going to turn it off. Notice that if I wanted to grab on to a corner here, well, I could zoom way, way in, but I still may not be able to get it perfectly. So by turning on the object snap, it will snap me beep, right onto an endpoint so that I have that perfectly done. Also, you'll see that I have a midpoint, and you'll see that I have a perpendicular. So this line that I'm getting ready to drop is going to be perpendicular to that particular line. So what happens if I go over here? You notice that this is the center of the line, but yet here is perpendicular to the line that I'm grabbing onto there. Now, let's go down here, and I want you to just hover over it. I'm not clicking on this. I'm just, my mouse is there, putting there, and I'm letting go of my mouse. And you see that the name of it comes up. Now I'm going to right-click. If I right-click, then it gives me all of these different choices, like midpoint, center, quadrant, perpendicular, nearest. And I can use these different settings to grab different points on here. Midpoint, of course, was the center of that line right there. Endpoint would be here, or here, or here, or here, in any endpoint of a line. Center itself would be center of a circle. A node is just a point, nothing more than just a point. If you took your pencil and made a dot, that would be a node. They're very hard to see. A quadrant, if I pick this, I can actually pick a portion of the circle. I can pick a quadrant of the circle. Intersection, if I wanted to pick this intersection, I could, or this intersection, or this intersection, or this intersection. I could find it by intersection. Extension is kind of gives me, well, if I drew a line, for instance, if I drew a line here, and I want to figure out where it's going to go, where the extension might be, then it would give me, and I can't get it to do it for the life of me right now. It is not going to. It's not going to do it for me. So anyway, let's go back down here. We'll come back to that one. Insertion, perpendicular, tangent. Tangent is where you're perpendicular to an angle on a circle. Nearest, apparent intersection. Well, that's not really an intersection, but could be. And then if I wanted to draw a line parallel to another, that would be what I'd use there. Others are the three-dimensional object snap. We won't be using that with me. You have object snap tracking, allow or disallow dynamic functions. So in other words, these numbers that you see up on the near the cursor where it says specify first point, I can turn that off or on if I want to. Dynamic input, same thing. This show hide weight line is if I wanted to draw any of these lines thicker, then that would show me that they are thicker. Not rightly sure what that is. Properties, if I want to know what the properties of that line are, then I can turn the properties on, and there they are. It is a bilayer line, 0 width, and it is 22 feet 7 7/16 long. So that's basically what that is. Just some extra information for you. And I'm not sure about these two either. So anyway, that gives you a little bit of an idea of some of the stuff that's going on there. You've been seeing me draw stuff. This is a line thing, and I can just play with that. One thing here I want to tell you, if I'm finished with a drawing and I want to get out of it, I can hit escape, and I can go back and click on that again and begin. However, I can also hit enter, and it will also end the command. But now if I hit enter again, it will take me back to the function in which I had just finished. So that makes it real easy for me to continue drawing and then just start again without having to move my cursor back and forth from here to there. That little bit of motion right there will make you lose time. So it's best just to use that enter. So I would suggest that you keep one hand on the keyboard and one hand on the mouse. You have two hands, use them. You will need it. This is another thing to talk about is your drag or your select. I can select a line just by hovering over it and clicking. Or I can make a box, which I've just basically click, pull, and click again. Notice that it only grabbed those two lines. Now, notice that inside the box there, only two lines are highlighted. That's the only lines that it's going to do. When I do it in this direction, now I'm going from I'm going from left to right. Now if I go from right to left, notice what happens here. I picked up a bunch of them, but they were not inside the box. So what happens this way, if you look at it where I've got it now, anything that's touching the box, period, anything that's touching it whatsoever or inside of it is going to be highlighted. So I can pick up a whole lot of things and delete them if I need to. And all I've done was I hit the delete button. So I can swipe and delete. That way I don't have to be going and just hitting each one of them to do something with it. Okay. Now you saw me just a minute ago. I deleted this and then it all of a sudden came back real quickly. All I've done was I hit Control Z, and that is the same as this here, undo. So I can undo taking it off and putting it on. Gives you an idea how that works. Okay, this is the end of the first installment. We'll see how this goes.